So, good morning, Boker Tov. Today we have a double header. We have Chanukah, which is the first night, is tonight, and we also have the Parsha of Vayeshev. So we're going to start with the story of Joseph, the famous Joseph of the multicolored coat. I'm going to give a very brief synopsis of the story, and then we'll discuss something which I think is so gorgeous and beautiful in this week's Torah portion, and I think will give us strength considering the situation in Eretz Yisrael. And when we finish today, make it a habit of giving a dollar, a nickel, a quarter for tzedakah. So we do prayer, we do Torah study, and we do tzedakah, and this will help our brothers and sisters the world over, and of course in Eretz Yisrael. So a lady goes to the post office and she comes up to the counter and she says, I need 100 Chanukah stamps. The postman says, what denominations, ma'am? She says, look at this, oy vey, even in the post office, separatism and discrimination has turned up. She says, okay, give me 10 Orthodox stamps, 20 conservative stamps, 15 reform stamps, and throw in 10 humanistic stamps.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, all kidding aside, I saw that joke, I had to share it. I thought it was cute. So we know that Jacob has the 12 tribes, the 12 sons. And his favorite beloved wife, Rachel's first son was Joseph, and then the baby was Binyamin. And Yaakov seems to have a certain affinity for his son Joseph. Maybe because he was orphaned at such a young age. Remember, his mother Rachel dies on the way home from back to Israel. But also because he saw something in Joseph that he didn't see in his other sons. And he gives his son a beautiful multicolored coat. And the other brothers got jealous, rightfully so. And if you remember last year, we discussed that the multicolored coat, really, the fact that he was an orphan, his father was giving him a little extra love. There's times you have a large family, but there's times when you have to give one child a little extra attention. So it wasn't that Yaakov wanted to make his other sons jealous. It was more he felt that Yosef needed something extra. And last year we discussed more about it based on Kabbalah. I'm not going to go into it because I want to share something different today. And Yosef had a dream. He had two dreams, if you remember. They called him the dreamer. The first dream he has, he's 17 years old, that there was 11 sheaths of wheat and one sheath of wheat separate, and the 11 sheaths of wheat bow down to that one sheath of wheat. And then he has a second dream. There's stars, there's 11 stars, there's a moon, there's a sun, and there's one star, and the moon, the sun, and the stars are all bowing down to this one star. So what do you think when I come to you and tell you I had a dream of this dream, two dreams? What's your impression? Maybe egotistical. You're indicating that you're the star, S-T-A-R, in the sky, that everyone is bowing. Even Mama and Papa are bowing down to you in the second dream, right? The moon and the sun is Yaakov and Rachel, and the 11 stars are the brothers bowing down to that one star, Joseph. And then the sheaves of wheat, the same thing. 11 brothers, 11 bundles of wheat are bowing down to one bundle. So what do the brothers think? He's looking to take over. He's going to be the inheritor of our father. Look what he's sharing, a dream. And the father, Yaakov, kind of dismisses the dream by saying, listen, how could you say Mama is bowing down to you, Mother Rachel? She's not even alive. So he kind of minimized the dream. And then what happens? Yaakov sends his son to go check up on the brothers. And we know throughout the story, Yosef shares things that his brother do that are not necessarily the right thing. They eat animals, they don't slaughter them properly, they're a little bit promiscuous. So he's like tattles a little bit on his brothers. Not because he's a mean guy, but more that he's young and he thinks he's doing them a favor. And Yosef, you look at Yosef and you wonder about him. And remember last week you said he meets a man who's really an angel. He says, I'm looking for my brothers. And the man directs him. And what happens? The brothers gang up on him. They throw him in a pit. And when the oldest brother, Reuven, goes back home, because they're out distant fields, they decide, what are we going to do with him? We can't kill him. He's our brother. We're going to sell him as a slave. They sell him. And he ends up bought by a guy in Egypt called Potiphar, a very wealthy person in Egypt. And then Potiphar's wife takes a liking to him. He's handsome, he's strong. They said Yosef was gorgeous. He was gorgeous, the Torah describes us. He was extremely handsome. And he becomes this chief financial officer of Potiphar. And as he's working for Potiphar, the Torah describes whatever his hand touched turned to gold. God made everything he touched turn to gold. So all the investments and business he did for Potiphar, though he was considered a slave, he made his boss' business flourish. So he's successful, he's handsome. Potiphar's wife makes a pass at him every day. She wants to have intimacy with him. He pushes her, he ignores her because she's married. And he did grow up in his father's house. And just at the moment when he wants to acquiesce, he says, enough is enough. Everybody forgot about me. My father forgot about me. My brothers forgot about me. God forgot about me. He says today, when she makes an advance, I'm going to take it, because why should I endanger myself for what? And as he's about to allow himself to give in to her gestures, he sees his father's face like a vision, and he runs, and she grabs his coat, it's ripped, and that's proof that he tried to accost her. So they put him into prison. They put him into prison, and now he's really in the pits. No pun intended. And then one day he meets in prison two fellow inmates, the former baker of the king, who was put into prison because they found a rock in one of the muffins, a stone, and the butler, for whatever travesty, I think they found a fly in the drink or something. So the butler and the baker are in prison. And he looks at them and he says, guys, you seem a little down and out today. And I'm like, duh, they're in prison. They're in a hardcore Egyptian prison. How should they be feeling? Why does he even ask them? But he sees two fellow inmates who are down and out, and he says, what's going on, guys? And they tell him each one of them had a dream. The butler said, I had a dream that I was back at work. I was back in the palace, and I was squeezing 3 grapes into my master, the king's cup. And the baker says, I also had a dream. I had a dream that I had a basket of rolls and bagels on my head, and 3 birds were eating from my bagels and rolls. So they share their dreams. So Yosef says, with the help of God, I will help you interpret your dreams. The butler, he says, you're going to be freed in 3 days' time. The baker, he says, unfortunately, in 3 days' time, you're going to be killed. And it happens that way. The butler is freed, and right before the butler is freed, he says to him, please put in a good word with the king that I should be freed. I also want to get out of prison. But the butler is freed, and he forgets all about Yosef. You know how that feels to a guy And the baker 3 days later is hung by the prison. They execute the punishment. And then in next week's Torah portion, we're going to read how Paro has his dreams, and the butler wakes up and he says, "Oh, Your Majesty, 2 years ago, there was a guy in prison who knows how to interpret dreams." So the king says, "Bring him." And that's how Yosef, 2 years later, in his 30s, becomes the viceroy of Egypt. He interprets the dreams, and the king says, "Wow, this guy is valuable." And he puts in a master plan how to save Egypt from a famine. If you recall, it would be 7 years of famine, and he devises a plan that they should store up so much food during the 7 years of plenty, during the economic rise, that when there's a depression and a recession, Egypt will have enough food to last 7 years because of Yosef's vision and business acumen. And he gets appointed as viceroy of Egypt. This is the story of Joseph. This is the story of Joseph. Does anybody have any questions on the story before we analyze the relevancy of the story and what's happening? So I have to tell you, think about the 17-year-old boy sold into slavery by his brothers. They tell the father he's dead. Yaakov rips his clothes and he goes into mourning, but he's never comforted. You know why? Because deep down and in his spiritual deep soul, he knows his son is alive. This is kind of like with the hostages. Is he alive or isn't he alive? The worst form of pain is not knowing. There's no closure. There's no funeral. There's no shiva. There's no shloshim. When someone doesn't know what happened to their child, it's the worst misery and torture. At least give back the body. Let me bury my child, says a mother in Israel. Why are you holding on to my son, the soldier's body? Give me back. I want to bury him. So this is a terrible torture for Yaakov. They told him that Yosef look, his coat is covered in blood. They dip his coat in sheep's blood. A animal attacked him. So Yaakov mourns, but something is holding him back, the Torah tells us. He cries and cries and cries. So there's something very, very interesting that I want to share. The whole story that I just shared is the story, obviously, of the Torah portion. But there's a certain tremendous metamorphosis and transformation that happens in Yosef's life. And it is a metamorphosis and a transformation that we all can relate to at one point or another and gain strength and inspiration. We start off meeting Yosef. His father gives him a multicolored coat because he saw in Yosef a certain strength of character, a certain power. There are people that are shepherds. There are people that are leaders. His brothers had for themselves a vision of their lives as the shepherds who lived in the land of Israel and nurtured their flock. Yaakov saw in his son Yosef a whole different personality. He saw in his son a world leader, a man, a boy who would grow into a man that would be like a Moses, a man that would have a strength of influence, charisma, and power to transform the world. That's what the coat represented, the multicolored coat. His brothers looked at him and said, he's a dreamer. He envisions grandeur for himself. He's not like us. He's actually dangerous. He's a revolutionary. He thinks he's going to inherit us with his highfalutin thinking. And so when he comes to them, they put him in a pit. And the Torah says it had no water. Why does it have to tell us it had no water? To tell us he's not going to drown in the pit. But like we said, nothing in detail in the Torah is an empty detail. The reason the Torah tells us the pit had no water is because it's presenting for us a whole story underneath the story. And that's based, of course, on Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah, Hasidus, and the commentaries that delve into this. Yosef was a seed. Like it says, a child is called a zroa, a seed. What happens if you put a seed in a dry pit? It dries out. There's no water. There's no water. It needs water to grow. So the first pit he's put into has no water. What happens when his brothers put him in the pit? Then they take him out and they sell him into slavery. And then they go back to dad. They go, Dad, we're very sorry. Yosef had a terrible accident. He was attacked by a wild animal. And his father, the Torah describes, begins to weep, tears flowing from his eyes. His son, who he loved, his son of Rachel, the only Joseph from his son, I mean, he had Binyamin, but his oldest son from his beloved wife was just killed. He begins to sob. So the Kabbalah says those tears, in a metaphysical way, watered the pit, watered the life, the seed of Joseph. So when he's a slave by Potiphar, he's in a pit because he's a slave. Anything he does goes to Potiphar. And Potiphar's wife is pursuing him in a very vicious way. He begins to transform. The transformation of Yosef begins because he's challenged in this way. And it is the tears of his father. And when Potiphar's wife wants to have relations with him, and he's about to give in, he not only feels the father's tears, he sees his father's face. And he runs away. And we discussed it at other time, but just quickly, because it's such a beautiful thing. He sees his father's face, big deal. But what he saw at that moment and what he felt is there is someone who cares about me. He felt a connection. I'm not lost to the Jewish people. My father cares about me. I see his face. The worst thing for a child is to feel the parents gave up on them, that there's no one who believes in me. I'm a loser. I'm a failure. I can't succeed. I'll never succeed in my life. Every test I fail. My teachers hate me. My principal hates me. My parents, for sure, because what nachas am I giving them? But he saw his father's face and his father's tears. The seed begins to grow. He gains strength. That's why the pasuk says something very fascinating. He was in the house of Potiphar. V'chol yeshlo nasam b'yodai. Everything he did turned into gold. He was eminently successful. Whatever his hand touched, and you'll see why I'm pointing this out. He was so successful, everything he touched to gold. Now, keep that point in your mind. You'll see why I'm telling you this. So now he's in metaphorically, but also he's a slave. Now he's in a worse situation even. Before he was a slave, but he had free reign. He could do whatever he wanted, but he was a slave. He couldn't run away. But was he lacking food, money, food, clothing, shelter? No. Now it's all over for him, right? You think so? He's put into prison. He's accused of accosting one of the wealthiest people in Egypt. He's now put into prison. Another pit number 3. And now life is really over for him, right? Seemingly. Look what happens. What does the pasuk say? He becomes beloved to the warden of the prison. V'asher hu asa Hashem matzliach. Whatever he did in prison, he was successful. Remember, here it doesn't say his hand. There it says whatever his hand touched turned into gold. God helped him. Here it just said whatever he did, God made him successful. Now, how are you successful in prison exactly? Explain it to me. Yes, he was beloved by the warden, so the warden let him have free reign, and that's how he meets the baker and the butler. But I would not exactly say that there's a success in prison. But the Torah is talking about a different type of success, not so much like, oh my gosh, he's so successful in prison. He runs the cafeteria, like the prisoners have people of power. There's a hierarchy. What happens is like this to Yosef. When he's by Potiphar, God makes him successful that whatever his hand touches turn to gold. Whatever business deals, whatever negotiations, his master flourishes because of him. So if you just read the story, what would you say about Yosef? If you didn't have the whole equation and you didn't think the way you and I think now. Does anybody want to say anything? What would you say? He's an excellent businessman. He's acute. Has acumen. He's smart. He knows how to pick a stock. He knows when to buy and sell. He's a businessman. Biyadai. He knows how to wheel and deal. So of course he's successful. But we know it's because God made him successful. But now look, he's in prison. It doesn't say anything about him, his success, his hand. It says everything he did was successful through God. So before, you could blame it on he's brilliant, so if he's successful. What do you expect? Here, he's in prison. He comes to a point in his life where he had no opportunity to buy and sell. He comes in a point in his life where he literally has to put himself totally in God's hands. Where now I'm really nothing. And it is because I'm nothing, I'm only a prisoner, that his relationship with God takes on a newer, higher level, where there's nothing but what God gives me. And this transformation from having a hand in his success, even though God gave him the success, you still had a hand in it. You still have to go to work every day and buy and sell. He didn't sit on the chair and say, well, I'm going to get rich for Potiphar through God. He had a hand in it. In prison, he didn't have a hand in it. He totally realized at that moment when he's put into the lowest pit and the lowest point of his life, there is nothing but God here. And that's when he interprets the dreams, and 2 years later, he's freed. Now, God says, now you're ready to be Viceroy of Egypt. Now those dreams you dreamt about, where they're going to bow to you, and everyone's going to come, right? They come to Egypt and they bow to him because he's the Viceroy. Even his brothers bow to him. They don't know who he is. The fulfillment of the dreams, now he's ready. Because he went from a person of having faith in God, everything I do, of course, God's success, to a point where he said, I'm nothing. It's all up to God. And to put this in better terms, were you buried or were you planted? He asks himself the quintessential question, was I buried here or was I planted here? Going back to the analogy of the seed. And then when the brothers find out who he is and they think he's going to be vengeful, what does he say to them? I was sent here, not sold. Were you sold or were you sent? Were you buried or were you planted? He said, you think you sold me? God sent me here. You were just like the vehicle. I was sent here to become the Viceroy of Egypt, to save my people and the world. I wasn't buried, I was planted. My father's tears nurtured me. And when I was the lowest point in prison, and I had nothing, I had everything, because I was opened up now to a new reality that it's God and only God, and that's the only thing that will ever save me and take me. And when he was at that low point, but really that high point, is when he now becomes Viceroy of Egypt. And he tells his brothers, I wasn't sold, I was sent. I wasn't buried in that pit that day. I was planted in the pit. And this is really, if you think about it, our story. Every time something happens in our lives, challenges, pain, we look for reasons why it happened. My brother, he was always a ganef. He ripped me off. My friend, she put me in this situation. Had I not listened to her, I would have never gone there. We always have somebody to blame. It's natural, human nature. We're never going to say, I was not sold, I was sent. I was not buried, I was planted. It's a very high level to be able to look and say that the pain I'm experiencing, the torture, the slavery, my brothers sold me. Yosef had the biggest reason to turn away and say, listen, what do you expect from me? 17-year-old, orphan, sold into slavery, attacked by my boss's wife, and I didn't listen. I was put into prison. What do you want from me? What do you expect from me? You expect something from me? God put me here. What do you want from me, God? You expect me now to believe in you? You expect me to follow your ways? Who cares about me? I'm a prisoner. I'm never going to get out of prison. But he says, no, I was planted. I was sent. And with that transformation, he's able to become the viceroy of Egypt. When a person is able to take darkness and turn it into light, take challenges and turn it into opportunity, then you reach the highest peaks in your life, the greatest potential in your life. And it's a lifelong journey to be like this. This is Joseph's, he was in his 30s when he became viceroy. It didn't happen overnight. And the Torah shows us the transformation. First, he's his hand. You could say, he's a brilliant kid. No wonder he made good business. No wonder he's successful. But in prison, it was only because he opened himself up to a reality that Einoid Milvade, there's nothing but God. When he was in prison, he realized the nothingness is what's going to bring me the everything is, if that's a word. So sometimes it's the lowest point that allows us to kind of say, I tried everything. I'm smart. I tried my wit and I tried my money, using my money. I tried my connections. Nothing worked. That's the moment you open yourself up to nothing. And nothing means everything. Because there's nothing left in a sense. But I also want to say, it's not that there was nothing left, so that's why God became a player. It was when he was in such a low point that he realized that he was planted, not buried. There's a little bit of a differentiation between falling to your lowest point and then there's nothing, so you turn to God. It's not that he fell to his lowest point and there was nothing left. It was more that that's when he realized that the physical life is not really what is happening here. There's a bigger picture. In the nothingness, he saw everything. That's what I wanted to make a point. Because sometimes, you fall down, but there's nothing left. God, there's nothing left, which is also wonderful when you discover God. But here, it's not that he had nothing, that's why he discovered God. It's when that point where he realized it's not my hand, it's not my surroundings giving me success. There must be God here, only God. That his success came from God, not from his hand. That's the point I want to make here. Different from the point saying, of course, nothing left. Of course, you turn to God. There's not, what have you got to lose?
So can I ask a question?
Yes, I was going to stop now. Yes.
Can we only reach God when we're at our lowest? That's so depressing. I don't know what to say.
I'm glad you asked that. No. Quite the contrary. You know what it is. Sometimes you meet a person, right, and they seem to have a spiritual connection to God. They're connected to their neshama. We're seeking mission and purpose in our life. Some of these people are very successful people, happy people, well-adjusted people. Thank God their journey is in a good place, from a good place, right? They grew up in a happy family and they just open themselves up to their soul. Why am I here? They think about life. They try to do kindness in their life. And it's coming from a good place. And that's the best scenario. Why wait, God forbid, when you have a challenge or a pain or horror to open yourself up to that? So the best case scenario is now in good times. I'm not talking about the war in Israel. I'm saying generally speaking, in good times. You're happy, you're healthy, thank God. You have what to eat on the table. You and your husband have enough money to go around. You have a little nachas from your children, your grandchildren. Now is when you should open yourself up to that. Why do we only seek God when we're in pain? Why do we only identify with our Jewishness when we're being persecuted? Show God that don't persecute us so that we should become united. Don't give us darkness so that we should have to seek light. Find light and add more light to the world. So that's really the ideal scenario. Every person should seek to do good and bring light and connect with their divine mission and reason why you're on earth. Don't wait till life becomes a horror, God forbid, and then you seek out your mission and your life and your world's cause. And now I'm going to do good. Now I'm going to do a mitzvah. Do it now. That's the ideal scenario. But what we're seeing, what I'm trying to share is the fact that Yosef's life, which is what happened, how even someone who falls so down, who's put into a pit so many times and is neglected, how he pulls himself out. So if he could do it in such a dire circumstances, alachas kama v'kama, people who have it good basically in life, how much more so we should be connecting to our divine soul and realizing that you might think it's your hand that brought you your success. Acknowledge that was God's hand, even though you're smart and you're ambitious and you're a go-getter. But it can give thanks to where thanks are due, so to speak. Bring God into your life during happy times. What, you only bring God into your life when you're miserable, when you need a blessing? What every day you need God in your life. So that's a very good point. That we should not wait till we're in dire circumstances. But unfortunately, some people only seek out God and prayer and the rabbi when they're in unfortunate circumstances, But at least then, also, at least then they go. At least they don't just wallow. At least they look for God and they look for reasons and answers. Because life is tough. Even if you and I are living the best life here, but look what's going on in Israel. How could you not feel for your brothers and sisters? So even if we have the best life in Fairfield County, look what's going on. And didn't your heart bleed when you saw women in Ethiopia being attacked and in India? Doesn't your heart bleed when you hear the news of a woman you never met and saw, look what they did to her? Murder, honor killing and honor attacks. It makes me so sick to my stomach because we're human beings. Thank God. So I hope I answered the question, Diane. Did I? So what else? Does Jane, you want to add anything?
I think what Diane means is maybe we can hear God more when we're at our lowest. Because, there's a lot of other things, the noise that gets in the way. And then when we just leave more room, maybe.
Yeah. There's a void. And when there's a void, You know how when it's very noisy, you don't hear anything. In a noisy room, you don't hear the voice. In silence, in pain, is when you hear sometimes the godly voice. It's much easier. But the trick is to not wait for that. To find God's voice in the noise of life, in the materialistic pursuits. Find a place for God in your life. That's the whole idea of learning and mitzvahs and Torah and connecting in your very busy life. You know? So when you're doing laundry and shopping and investing and buying and selling and writing and editing and art, you know, I went to someone's house. I was doing why did I go to someone's house? I forgot. And the son is an artist. So he's showing me his art. I'm like, I don't see anything Jewish, I tell him. I said, you're very talented. Perhaps a few of your sculptures should have a Jewish theme. He said, I never thought of it.
Real.
I said, because you're a Jewish person, you have to put your mission and purpose is to spread the light of Judaism. So make some Jewish art. I said, if you need help with ideas, call me. I have to think. I don't know what he should do. So in everything we do, we should seek God. We should find a mission and purpose in what we do. It's very important. So to sum up, before we go into Chanukah, is basically ask yourself the question. We all have to ask a question. Was I sent or was I sold? Am I buried or was I planted? That's the quintessential life's question. We are not victims, Jews. We are transformers in life. We transform all pain. We transform darkness. That's what we do. That's what we do. So as we segue into Chanukah, I heard a beautiful story. So there was soldiers on a break from fighting in Gaza. And they have rations, they eat. It was lunchtime. What's the rations? Kosher tuna fish. Yuck. No mayonnaise, no tomatoes, no cucumbers. So the soldiers have a shtick. What's the shtick? They take out like a cigarette lighter or matches, and they roast the tuna. So it's roasted tuna. It's a shtick the soldiers do. They claim it tastes much better. So the soldier takes out his matches, and he starts roasting the tuna. So his commander yelled at him, Moshe, what are you, nuts? Around us, we're in a live battlefield. There's mines, there's rockets, there's grenades. Any minute we could get shot at, and with a live fire, we'll blow up. So he gets all upset, and he's holding the tuna on fire, and he throws the can. And next thing they know, there's an explosion from the can of tuna. The can of tuna fell into a tunnel, one of their tunnels, and it blew up. Something in the tunnel.
Oh my
So the soldiers jumped up and they ran and they shot the Hamas terrorists who were in the tunnel, who did not get burnt by this tuna can. And their lives were saved because right where they were sitting was a tunnel, and they were going to come out and attack. But when the guy threw the tuna in there, they thought a bomb was being thrown at them.
Wow.
So his life was saved. So it's a beautiful story. There's so many miraculous stories coming out.
Yeah.
So many beautiful, powerful stories. But the reason I share the story is because we're coming into Chanukah. The whole energy of Chanukah is of miracles. The miracle of the oil, the miracle of the victory, the few took over the mighty, the little bit of oil, instead of burning for one day, burned for 7 days. So the whole energy of Chanukah is of miracles. And if you think about our lives, every story is a miracle. Purim is a miracle, and Chanukah is a miracle. Every part of our lives is a miracle. It's a miracle. Joseph coming out of prison and interpreting the dreams was not a miracle. Who would believe it would happen even? So we see that in the prayer of Chanukah Alanissim, it says, just like in those days, will be in our days. And when you read it, and as a kid you read it, you go, okay, but you see it. It's practical. It's not a Baba Maisa. Just like there was miracles in those days, there's miracles in our days. So that's what we hold on to. That's what we hold on to. So before we go into a few little insights about Chanukah, we don't have that much time. I want to ask you, tell me what Chanukah means to you. It could be a simple thing. It could be a complicated thing. What does Chanukah mean to you? Jane, you want to go first? Diane, you want to go first? It could be a simple thing.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So Hanukkah means to me family, around the glow of the candles, just this magnificent feeling. Watching my children's faces in the flame, I don't know, in the glow.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah, beautiful.
It's also that, but it's also because it's not a holiday where it's a holiday where there's work, there's homework. When the kids were growing up, there's work to do. We still have to go to work. It's that taking a pause, and that taking a pause to remember and to do what we just said, to think about God and to think about miracles and to enjoy a little bit if we can, and to remember not that we only see light, but we have to be the light.
That's beautiful. I love that. Be the light.
I like that.
I like that. Very beautiful. What about anyone? You want to add anything? Anybody? So why do we give Chanukah geld? It's a custom to give our children money, actual money, not only gift. Gifts became, we were Americans, we give gifts. When I was growing up,
stress. It does. I didn't want to say that, but yeah. So why
the custom is to give Chanukah geld on Chanukah. And some people said the custom is only like the third night or the fourth night, one night. The Rebbes used to give one night Chanukah geld. That was the significant night. But in my house, we got every night. And my Zayda and Baba would give us at our Chanukah party. They gave us Chanukah geld.
Nice. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I had so many relatives. My mother would give each of us a baggie, and we would collect a lot of Chanukah geld. You were wealthy at the end of Chanukah. So one year, I have Kanainahara 9. My mother has 9 siblings. One recently passed away, but so 9 siblings. Even if everyone gave you $1 or 50 cents, you did well. So the joke was, one of the aunts, one of my uncle's wives, her children all fell asleep. So she took 6 cups, she labeled it, and she went around for her kids. And everyone was like, wow, she really is something, that one. She's collecting. I would be embarrassed to collect for my kids. Oh, this is for my sleeping child. This is for my other sleeping child. For my other sleeping. She had no bush of this one. She collected every time her kids fell asleep. She collected for them. Why should my children lose out? She told me. And I'm like, okay. But anyway, so the reason we give Chanukah geld is, first of all, because Chanukah comes from the word rededication. When the Beis Hamikdash was desecrated by the Greek Syrians, they put in idolatry and they slaughtered pigs there, and they destroyed the beautiful ornaments and stole the vessels. They desecrated it. So when the Maccabees freed it from Greek Syrian rule, they rededicated it. And that's why they wanted to relight the menorah. Even the menorah was stolen, by the way. They used a tin menorah to relight the menorah during Chanukah. People don't know this. The beautiful golden menorah was stolen by the Greek Syrians. So rededication. But if you change the words, it also comes from the word chinuch, Chanukah, chinuch, education.
Education. I like that.
We educate our children. We educate our children that everything comes from God. And I'm giving you $1 today. I'm giving you $0.25 today. Buy yourself bubble gum, but also give tzedakah from the money I give you. We educate our children that money is nothing if it doesn't have a purpose. I'm giving you money, but now you have to take that money and elevate it. Use it for holiness and good things. So the message of Chanukah is educating our children. And one way we educate our children is by giving them the message of that everything you're given by God, all materialism, needs to be used for a higher purpose. It's not only there for arm candy. You know, God blessed you with certain gifts. Use it for good uses. God blessed you with the ability to give tzedakah, to give gelt. You give to your children. You go, honey, I'm giving you $2. One for yourself, one to do something good. Give tzedakah.
I like that.
Buy a gift for another little child at school. Do something good with that money. And the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, would give out Chanukah gelt. So people kept $1 and they gave another $1 for tzedakah. But Chanukah is about education. Go ahead, Jane. Yes.
So, I remember when my daughter went to Israel, people started giving her money, and that was to give to people. Is that the same idea?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, shliach mitzvah. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you go, when my son-in-law went to Israel, I gave him $1, a little more, but I gave him money and I made him an emissary of mitzvah.
Right.
I said, go, it's called shliach mitzvah. If you're traveling for a mitzvah, it's a protection.
Oh.
When I moved to Connecticut, every time I would go back to Brooklyn, my mother would give me money and she'd say shliach mitzvah. On your way home, give tzedakah there at home, because I'm making you an emissary of a mission to do good, tzedakah. So it's called shliach mitzvah. Same, yeah, similar idea, but not so similar, but more the idea of if someone is an emissary to do a mitzvah, they're protected by God, because I'm here to do a mitzvah.
Oh, okay. Got it.
So which brings me to the story. It's not a Chanukah story, but I'll tell you very quickly because it just reminded me. My father was in the hospital so many months and weeks. And my brothers would always tell the Rebbe, because the Rebbe was very close to my father. So the Rebbe sent a message that my father must be in the hospital because he has a mission to fulfill there. And once he fulfills his mission in the hospital, he'll be released. So my mother heard this. So she went around to all the wards, giving tzedakah and saying prayers with people. She was, all right, once my father's mission is fulfilled, he'll be released. So my father says to my mother very nicely in Yiddish, it's my mission, not your mission. In other words, I need to do it. That you're running around from ward to ward is very nice doing mitzvahs, but I need to do it. And thereafter, my father was finally released from prison. I mean, from hospital. Sorry, from the hospital.
Maybe it was our mission too.
Yeah.
Wow. That's the story.
So I want to share something with Chanukah that I love. I prepared like 7 things, but we don't have time. So I prepared this because this is really beautiful. So the Talmud, and then it's later written into the Code of Jewish Law, discusses the laws of Chanukah. How do you light the menorah? When do you light the menorah? What can you use to light the menorah? So one of the questions that 2 of the Talmudic scholars debate, Rav and Shmuel, the 2 great sages, and many, but 2 in the Talmud, of let's say you're lighting a menorah and you don't have a shamash. You know what the shamash is, the helper candle. Right. Either you didn't have enough money, like a lot of people in Europe, couldn't even afford candles, or you just don't have it. Can you take one of your other candles and light the candles? Can you take one of the regular candles? So what's the answer, Diane? Can you or can't you? No. That's okay. Rav says no. What does Shmuel say, Jane?
Well, if one says no, the other one has to say yes.
Very good. Okay, everybody here is a Talmudic scholar. Yet, we follow the answer of Shmuel. Now, normally, every single law we follow Rav. Why, in this case, do we follow Shmuel that says, yeah, if you don't have a helper candle, a shamash, you can take another candle and light the others. So Rav says you're not allowed to. You know why? It diminishes the respectability of the Chanukah candles. The Chanukah candles are revered. That's why you have a shamash. If you use one of the candles, you're diminishing it because now it's a servant candle and it drips and it might lose some flame, so to speak. So it's not permitted. But we don't follow Rav, we follow Shmuel. You know why? Because what Rav is saying, that if one candle lights another, it diminishes from that candle. But Shmuel says something very profound, which I love. When I light your flame, when you light my flame, not only it doesn't diminish, it increases. Because I light your flame, you'll light the next person's flame, they'll light the next flame, and there'll be more and more and more light without your light being diminished. That's the strength of light. Many people have the thing, listen, I'm a religious Jew, I'm an Orthodox Jew, I'm a Hasidic Jew, but I don't want to mingle with other Jews who are not like me. You know why? Their enlightened ideas, their ways of life, their transgressions might become part of my life because I'll be influenced. So they are segregated. They live in little shtetls, they live in little pockets of America. We don't want to mix with the others. But Chabad, Lubavitch, the Rebbe said quite the contrary. Your light does not diminish because you're with somebody whom you might think is not as maybe religious as you. Quite the contrary, your light will grow.
Yes.
By teaching, influencing, being with Jews of all walks in life, your flame will grow, not be diminished. If you know an Aleph, but you don't know a Bet, you teach the person the Aleph. If you know Aleph, Bet, Gimel, and the other person knows nothing, you teach them Aleph, Bet, Gimel. You don't have to be a holy roller to share your flame. That's what Shmuel is saying. If you share your light, your flame will never be diminished. Your flame will only increase. And the light will grow and grow and grow. And this is who we are. We light that's why every night we light another candle. The Shammai debated Hillel. Hillel said light 1, then 2, then 3. Shammai said, no, the world is so dark. Right away, light 8. And then 7, 6, 5. Break through the darkness. But Jews don't diminish. We always increase. That's why we follow Hillel. That's why every night another light. We never decrease. We don't do countdowns. We always do count-ups. Unless you're a Jew on Apollo, then you could do a countdown. You're going to the Apollo, you're flying to Mars. Then you can't fight with NASA. But Jews always increase. That's why we follow the way of Hillel, not Shammai. Every night we increase. Every night we increase. Yeah. And I want to end off with one final thought about Chanukah. Did I ever tell you the story of the quintuplets, the 5 babies born? Did I tell you last year the story?
No.
No, you sure?
I'm not sure. But tell us again.
I think you did, but tell us again.
Or you want to
remember? Let's see if we remember.
Or do you want to hear another story, which I told you for sure last year, the story of the menorah, the window that it's circulating, and in the behind there you see the Nazi headquarters, the swastika.
Yes, I remember that one. That one I remember.
That one you remember. Okay, so I'll tell you the story of 5 for 5. So this girl gives birth in Muncie. It just happened a few years ago. Gave birth to 5 babies. You know, she couldn't have children for many years. And, you know, usually when you get a little fertility help, you have many kids. Yeah. So she gave birth to 5 babies. Now, 5 babies, quite expensive. So they put out an appeal in Spring Valley on all the chats. They made a GoFundMe. Everybody helped this girl, 5 babies, and her husband's a teacher in yeshiva, and they're not exactly, it's expensive.
Yeah.
So this very wealthy woman who lived in Spring Valley was a Holocaust survivor, was very wealthy. It's interesting, a lot of Holocaust survivors made a lot of money. God blessed them with wealth. And she said, I want to give and she gave a huge sum of money for the babies. And then she asked the organizer, can I meet the babies? And like, they're sure. I mean, with that kind of money you gave us, of course. So she comes in, she meets the babies. And as she's leaving, she notices a photo on the wall and she like faints. So that she sits down and she's like a panic attack. So the mother of the baby said, what happened? What happened? She said, who is the woman in the picture? She says, that's my grandmother. She said, grandmother? You know, your grandmother saved my life in Auschwitz. She says, really? She says, yeah, let me tell you the story. I and 4 other girls from a very religious community were put into Auschwitz. And we decided that we would try to keep as many mitzvahs as possible, Shabbos and Yontif and whatever we could in the camps. Now Chanukah was coming and we wanted to light a menorah. How are we going to light a menorah? So we got strings from our clothing, from our clothing. We ripped out little threads and we found potato peels that we could use as a base. But now we need oil. So we decided after curfew, we're going to go to the back of the kitchen. They throw out old fat in the garbage. We'll go and we'll get some fat for oil. They 5 of them snuck out. And right when they were getting the fat, a Nazi officer spotted them. And he said, tomorrow you're going to be shot. No one steals from the kitchen garbage. Nobody. So they didn't know what to do. They're going to be shot. So they decide they're going to go to the edge of the camp. There was a Jewish woman who was known as the translator. She was also a prisoner, but because she was a translator, she had like a little bit of a fancier prison. She was like in a shed at the edge of the camp. And she had special privileges because she was a translator. She knew every language. And they said, let's go to her. Let's see what she could do for us. So they come and they knock on the door, no answer. They knock again, no answer. So they push the door open. And when they go into the inner room, they see her lighting a menorah by her window, by her wall, not her window. And she turns around and she's like yelling at them, get out. You're going to have me killed if they find that I lit a menorah. It was the first night of Chanukah. They're going to shoot me. And they told her, no, you don't understand. We're going to be shot tomorrow. You need to save our lives. Please, please. I can't do anything for you. I can't endanger myself for you. Leave me alone. So the girls go back to their barracks, very disheartened. In the morning, they're brought out before the firing squad, and they see her, the translator, arguing with the commandant. And she's gesturing, and they don't see what she's saying, but she's yelling and gesturing and pointing. Next thing they know, the commandant comes over to them and says, you can go back to your barracks, but if I ever catch you, you're dead. So they realized she had saved their lives. So this woman, the wealthy woman, says, your grandmother, I was one of the girls. Your grandmother saved my life. Wait, this is the clincher. So the mother of the 5 babies says to this elderly woman, ever since the babies were born, my grandmother has been coming to me in a dream and telling me in Yiddish, 5 for 5, which means 5 for 5.
Oh.
The grandmother,
5 girls?
5 girls, she had 5 babies.
Wow.
Beautiful.
I don't have to spell it out, but basically, whatever good you do in the world will come back. The 5 for the 5. Whatever you do, like that. My Baba always said to me that Eibishis came Baal Chayv, which means in English, God never leaves himself in debt to anyone. You do, and you will get. You give, and you will get. So the message of Chanukah is this. The feminine energy, Chanukah is the feminine energy because it's light. Shabbos candles, that's why we were entrusted with Shabbos candles. Light is the feminine energy in the universe. Because light reveals. Light is subtle. Light cuts through darkness. That's the feminine energy. Men give love, women are love. Men conquer, women reveal. So Chanukah is our holiday. That's why it's a custom. When the lights are burning, women don't do menial tasks. We don't cook, we don't bake, we don't do laundry, we don't sell and buy stocks. You relax during the time that the candles are burning. That's the custom. Why? Because Chanukah is the feminine energy. It's the feminine light. And I didn't have time, but there's two very magnificent, three female heroines of the Chanukah story. Another time. So Friday, you light the Chanukah candles, and then you light the Shabbos candles. Because once you light the Shabbos candles, you can't kindle the Chanukah candles.
Okay.
So you have to go even earlier. So a half an hour before Shabbos, light the Chanukah candles with the family, and then you light your Shabbos candles.
Okay.
So that's the holiday of Chanukah, and this Chanukah and this week, the miracles of yesteryear will be revealed this year. The few, the Jewish people, will be conquer the many. And there should be peace and harmony. And of course, the ultimate bracha that we should see already, the redemption and the rebuilding of the third Beit HaMikdash, and we should be kindling the menorah in the Beit HaMikdash already. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, thank you.